Good evening and welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting, the 12th of September 2022. Item 1, meeting opening, 1.1, attendance. Are there any apologies, Mr Benny?
Yes, Mayor, there's a single apology this evening from the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Eden Foster.
Thank you, Mr Benny. Item 1.2, acknowledgement of traditional owners of the land. Council acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of this land, the Bunurong people, and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, while also recognising their deep and continuing connections to climate, culture and country. We also pay our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and their elders and acknowledge their journey. I'd now like to make a statement, and can I please ask you all to stand? On behalf of the Greater Dandenong City Council and members of our community, we offer our deepest sympathies to all those mourning the loss of Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II, who passed away peacefully last Thursday morning at the age of 96. We honour her tremendous legacy by flying our flags at half-mast, which we will do for the duration of the mourning period. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II made a tremendous impact on the lives of so many. She led with such grace, heart and resilience during her remarkable reign over 7 decades. We pay tribute to her incredible service above self and her dedicated commitment to the people of the Commonwealth. We pay our deepest respect and admiration to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. May she rest in everlasting peace. Please join me in 1 minute's silence. Thank you. Please be seated. Item 1.3, offering of prayer, reflection or affirmation. As part of Council's commitment to recognising the cultural and spiritual diversity of our community, the prayer, reflection or affirmation this evening has been offered by Miss Ursula Aruma from the Sri Sathya Sai organisation, a member of the Greater Dandenong Interfaith Network, which Councillor Rhonda Garrard will read. Please stand.
We pray for those gathered here today and for the community of the City of Greater Dandenong. We pray for our parents, siblings, relatives and friends. Fill their hearts and souls with your peace, your quietness and your balance. Let the joy of your being fill their hearts with the strength that brings your endless blessings. Let them all feel your omnipresent awakening protection, your love, wisdom and strength. O powerful light of truth, send your rays into the hearts of all men for perfection, love and enlightenment to reign, and to bring help, freedom and peace to all. O God, take thy love and let it flow in the fullness of devotion to you. O God, take their hands and let them always serve you. O God, take our mind and our thoughts and let them always be in agreement with you. O God, take all and let us be your instrument.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Item 1.4, confirmation of minutes of previous meeting. meeting of council held on the 22nd of August 2022.
Happy to move
Moved
it.
by Councillor Tan, second by Councillor Dark. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 1.5, disclosures of interest. Mr Benny.
Mayor and councillors, there's a single disclosure this evening. It's from Councillor Sean O'Reilly. It relates to item 2.3.1, Town Planning Application 191 to 195 Springvale Road, Springvale, PLN 22/0027. The type of interest is a general conflict of interest, and the nature of the interest is that Councillor O'Reilly's daughter has in the past had a friendship with the daughter of a beneficiary of the applicant. Councillor O'Reilly will be required to leave the chamber for any vote and for consideration of the item, and to redeclare the interest before he does so. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Benny. 2. Officers' reports, Part 1, 2.1, documents for sealing, 2.1.1, documents for sealing. Moved by Councillor Trung, second by Councillor Garrard. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 2.2, documents for tabling, 2.2.1, petitions and joint letters. Moved by Councillor Long, second by Councillor Garrard. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 2.3, statutory planning applications. 2.3.1, town planning application number 191 to 195, Springvale Road, Springvale, planning application number PLN 22/0027. Councillor O'Reilly.
Mayor, I declare a conflict of interest. It is a general conflict of interest, and the nature of the interest is my daughter has in the past had a friendship with the daughter of a beneficiary of the application, and I'll leave the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Can we please note that Councillor O'Reilly is now leaving the chamber. Councillors, I'll reread that again. 2.3, statutory planning applications. 2.3.1, town planning applications number 191 to 195, Springvale Road, Springvale, planning application number PLN 22/0027.
Happy to move, Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Dark, second by Councillor Milkovich. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Could we please call Councillor O'Reilly back into the chamber? Councillors, we'll move on to the next item, 2.3.2, town planning application number 49, Atlantic Drive, Keysborough, planning application number PLN 22/0069. Councillors, do I have a mover?
I'll
Councillor
move.
Dark. Second by Councillor O'Reilly. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 2.3.3, town planning application number 162 to 170, Athol Road, Springvale South, planning application number PLN 21/0419. Moved by Councillor O'Reilly, second by Councillor Dark. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried.
Mayor.
Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, this application represents the plans for a reinvigorated Springvale South shopping centre, and as a semi-regular customer of the shopping centre, it will be good to see this quite important shopping centre in this part of Springvale to have new investment, new development, including some mixed-use offices and things like that, and really spark up around that area. We note in the report, Mayor, that there were some issues around waste management for some of the adjoining properties, but I believe that Council will do its best to assist where it can in resolving those issues. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I just wish to echo the sentiment of what Councillor O'Reilly said. This has been probably one of the oldest shopping centres that we have in our municipality, one that has been in for a very long time an issue with I know bins overflowing, with homeless, with unruly behaviour, with even more rubbish. There's, I believe, a place of worship there, and there have been issues with that and neighbourhood amenity. And forever and a day, the council's been receiving a lot of complaints about it. To finally get to a stage where we now have a town planning permit and hopefully construction starts shortly, it will revitalise an area that is very, very important to the residents of Springvale South as their local shopping hub. A lot of them have had to go into Springvale or come across into Parkmore Shopping Centre or across to Dingley because of the lack of, I suppose, infrastructure that's at the shopping centres. So to see a comprehensive plan to revitalise something as tight as this is very, very exciting for our municipality.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Councillors, move on to the next item. Item 3, question time public. Mr Benny.
The first question this evening is from Teresa Rumpf of Noble Park North. My children have started basketball at Dandenong Stadium. On Saturdays, the car park is always overflowing with cars parked everywhere they can. A lot of the area is wet and boggy. As Dandenong Council have now taken over management, is there a plan for additional car parking with adequate drainage? There is so much more open space adjacent but not accessible or appropriately drained. Mr Kearsley could respond, Mr Mayor. Mr Kearsley.
Through you, Mayor, and I'd like to thank Teresa for the question. I can advise that the land surrounding the Dandenong Stadium and existing car park is part of the Dandenong floodplain and is subject to significant amounts of inundation. Parking at the Dandenong Stadium has been identified as a challenge at peak times, and consultation with key stakeholders is ongoing in relation to future improvements on the site, including the provision of additional car parking. Whilst there is currently no endorsed plans or budgetary allowance to expand the existing car park, South East Leisure and Council are investigating parking restrictions to essentially stop all-day parking for those people who may not be actually there for the sport. So we hope that that would allow for some additional parking to be made available. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Mr Benny.
Next question is from Timothy Bolton of Noble Park. It relates to dangerous intersections near Noble Park train station. On the 12th of July this year, I visited the Keysborough branch on the Dandenong Council to ask for an assessment of the traffic dangers and feasibility of installing a roundabout, and a reference is provided. I have witnessed the lack of planning infrastructure for the Douglas Street, Ian Street, Leonard Avenue intersection near the train station and re-evaluation Mons Parade cross intersection. I also saw the lack of on planning and multiple near misses for commuters, congestion, no grade separation, dangerous mix of pedestrians and traffic with cars turning in front of each other at the wrong angles. I think there should be a roundabout in this location. I've seen the subsequent patches applied to try to stop bus and train commuters from running in front of traffic directly in front of the station. The path should be fenced near the pedestrian crossing on Douglas Parade, should be a signal protected and possibly moved back. Analysis of these crossings needs to be done with video. There needs to be integration of side road with protected bike lanes. 15-minute walkable city policy needs to be implemented on Noble Park. Mr Kearsley, Mr Mayor.
Mr Kearsley.
Through you, Mayor, and thank you, Timothy, for the question. Council is very much aware of the safety concerns at the intersection of Ian Street, Mons Parade and the new Madeira Way Link Road. Some of this has come about due to the implementation of the grade separation project. We're currently implementing streetscape improvements along Ian Street, which includes curb out stands and a raised safety platform just prior to the Mons Parade intersection. Whilst we are not yet the road authority for Madeira Way, we are planning to install a pavement mural once the relevant transfer of authority is completed within the coming months. These aforementioned actions will assist with highlighting the intersection and also reducing drivers' approach speeds, which should result in improved safety for all road users. Once those works have been undertaken, we'll probably then undertake some further surveys of both speed and traffic conditions in the coming 6 to 12 months to work out whether any further additional works are required. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Mr Benny.
The next question is from Philip Lamaro of Dandenong. Mr Lamaro did ask that he be able to ask his own question. He doesn't seem to be here, so I might put his question to one side in case he walks through the door any minute. The next is from Matthew Kerwin of Noble Park. Has the public consultation regarding the lighting review of Civil Grove commenced? Many of the residents who use Cyril Grove to walk to the railway station at night live off streets that feed into Cyril Grove and would like to have a say regarding improved lighting. Mr Kearsley, Mr Mayor.
Mr Kearsley.
Through you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr Kerwin, for your question. Unfortunately, due to an unforeseen administrative error, Cyril Grove was left off the light testing for the months of July and August, and I do apologise for that. The testing will be prioritised in the next monthly test, which we hope to be in the coming weeks in September. This testing will establish whether the lighting in the street meets Australian standards. If it meets the standards, then no further action will take place. If it does not meet the standards, however, the residents immediately adjacent to any proposed additional lights will be consulted so any objections to the new lights can be resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Mr Benny.
This question is from Susan Smith of Dandenong. The agenda contains another 110 signatures to a petition relating to the Dandenong Community Hub. That makes 526 signatures in total. When are the concept plans for the Dandenong Community Hub going to be finalised and the consultation on the detailed design going to start? Mr Devine. Mr Mayor.
Mr Devine.
Through you, Mr Mayor. The revised concepts for the Dandenong Community Hub are to be considered by Council in September-October of this year, and at that point the project page on Council's website will be updated and all stakeholders advised of the next steps. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Devine. Mr Benny.
The next question is from Sylvia Mastrogiovanni of Dandenong. It's been 5 months since Dandenong residents stood up and spoke out against the sham consultation for the Little India redevelopment. Hardly any Dandenong residents knew about the consultation this year, and the very few streets that were letterboxed were informed about a consultation session that happened the very next day. We ask that Council lobby the State Government to do the consultation properly, with sessions at various times that the community can attend and adequate notice of these sessions. What has Council done in response to Dandenong residents' concerns? Mr Kearsley.
Mr Kearsley.
Through you, Mayor, and I thank the questioner for this particular question. It is actually quite timely. During March and April, Council received several public questions at its formal Council meetings about the master plan and the engagement process undertaken by Development Victoria. Council subsequently wrote to Development Victoria seeking their support to revisit the community engagement and consultation process. Development Victoria have advised Council that further consultation will be held in October to share a summary of feedback received to date, provide an update on the next steps for the project and to allow the community an opportunity to submit feedback. I can provide the information. There's an online webinar on Tuesday the 11th of October between 5:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and there'll be in-person sessions on Tuesday the 18th of October at the City of Greater Dandenong Civic Centre. Session 1 is 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Session 2 is 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. We understand the consultation opportunities will be advertised in the local press and via letterbox flyers, and we've also arranged our own information via communication channels and Council's website. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Mr Benny.
The next question is from Tina Congius of Dandenong. Now with COVID restrictions having been removed, what is causing the Dandenong Civic Centre underground car park still to be inaccessible to the public? In response, I can advise that Council has taken a staged approach to the reopening of many facilities, including the car park. The car park is indeed open to the public on Monday evenings when ordinary council meetings are conducted. We realise that that is not a significant opening, but it is one step in the direction of reopening. And the broader question of its accessibility to the public at other times, I will need to take on notice and discuss with officers who have responsibility for managing the facility. The next question then is from Matthew Kerwin of Noble Park. Has the budget for the upkeep of Dandenong Park been cut? When visiting it on the weekend, I noticed that many of the garden beds have a lot of weeds or lost shrubs that have not been replaced, and that there are several waterlogged lawn areas that need levelling. It was particularly bad around the Stan Prior stage, but also in other areas. Mr Kearsley, Mr Mayor.
Mr Kearsley.
Through you, Mayor, thank you, Mr Kerwin, for the question. Certainly the budget for Dandenong Park has not been cut, but I can advise that whilst we have taken Dandenong Park through a major upgrade and redevelopment with the implementation of the master plan, unfortunately, due to extremely wet weather experienced recently, Council has been unable to complete some of the works required in the park, and particularly the levelling. This will be completed as soon as the park is dry enough to get vehicles in so that we don't damage the park. A large planting and associated weed control program is also due to begin this month, and over the coming months you will see the maintenance of Dandenong Park improve back to the high level expected by the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Mr Benny.
The next question is also excuse me, from Matthew Kerwin of Noble Park. I understand that the council minutes are produced by an external company who transcribe the audio recording of the council meetings. After that outsourced work is done, what is the process for the minutes of our council meetings to be checked by council officers before being published? They don't seem to be being checked in many instances. For example, in the councillor's report for Councillor Tim Dark at the last council meeting, it states that he said, "I have received an email from a resident in Keysborough to do with the serpentine work in Keysborough." I was sure he didn't say that and it had been mistranscribed. I expect that he referred to Serpentine Road, not Serpentine Work, and checked the audio recording and found that was the case. I find these mistakes often and wonder who is checking the minutes for accuracy, particularly in relation to getting the names of streets, parks and buildings right, which seems a consistent problem and needs someone ideally with some local knowledge to check references to them. Ms Roberts could respond.
Ms Roberts.
Thank you, Mr Kerwin, for the question, and through you, Mayor. Often with large documents that you have worked on over time and gone through many times, it's difficult to actually see the mistakes, particularly if you are under some pressure to publish a document under certain timeframes. Fresh eyes will always pick up errors, and you have obviously found one in the last minutes, so thank you for that. This will be amended, and late amendments are permitted under the governance rules. You are correct in saying that an external company transcribes the questions and answer sections of the minutes from the audio recording of the council meetings. This is checked several times. The rest of the work is done in-house, and yes, sometimes mistakes are made because the documents are extremely large, and sometimes we miss things. We do not check the contents of the reports from officers, as they are responsible for their own content. Most of the errors are picked up and amended when they are checked. We also quite often pick up mistakes after the minutes have been published and amend them after publication when resolutions are being actioned. Again, the governance rules allow us to do this at times like that, and it is a continual process of review and amendment. So the first iteration of minutes that are published are often reviewed when actions are undertaken, and we usually amend any errors to the online and final version when required. We have all the tools available to us within our council systems to get this right. I don't agree that there are consistent errors, but I do take your comments on board, and we will look into how we can improve further our processes when our full team returns in October.
Thank you, Ms Roberts. Mr Benny.
The next question is from Philip Dole of Noble Park. My question is there any external auditing done on the building maintenance contractors that the City of Dandenong employ to do these works? Mr Kearsley.
Mr Kearsley.
Through you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr Dole, for the question. I can advise that Council's building maintenance contractor, the Campaign Group, was appointed through a local government collaborative procurement process in 2017-2018. During this process, the company was externally assessed on a number of criteria, including OH&S, environmental management and customer service. Council staff regularly audit at random works undertaken by Campaign Group on quality and safety. The findings of these audits are discussed monthly with the Campaign Group and reported internally to management. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Mr Benny.
Next question is from Mr Earl Misso of Dandenong North. There are two questions. The first question: having worked for the Melbourne and Moorabbin councils for many years, I have observed and now feel strongly that any ratepayer should be able to put forward a question freely at any council meeting and receive a reply without having to go through submitting their question in writing before the meeting. Can section 4.5.8 of the governance rules that outlines how public question time must be conducted be added to the agenda as an item for discussion at a future council meeting? Ms Roberts. Mr Mayor.
Ms Roberts.
Thank you, Mr Misso, for the question, and through you, Mayor. There is a process that needs to be followed for amending the governance rules under the Local Government Act 2022. So I will take the question on notice and give you a full response after I've discussed it further with the councillors.
Thank you, Ms Roberts. Mr Benny.
Next question is also from Earl Misso of Dandenong North. I propose that the practice of serving food and alcohol prior to council meetings is now inappropriate. I've discussed this matter with a number of councillors, including John Benny, who's not a councillor, but including John Benny, and I feel it is time to get this matter onto the agenda for discussion at future council meetings. Ms Roberts.
Ms Roberts.
Thanks again, Mr Misso, for the question, and through you, Mayor. Another one that I'd like to discuss further with councillors and come back to you, take the question on notice and come back to you in more detail.
Thank you, Ms Roberts. Mr Benny.
And finally, I'll return to the question from Philip Lamaro, who doesn't seem to have arrived, and I will therefore read his question. Lonsdale Street, Dandenong underwent a multi-million-dollar revamp a few years ago. Driving from the north into Lonsdale Street, the council have landscaped planted trees and flagpoles to make entering central Dandenong inviting. Entering south of Lonsdale Street from Foster Street has not had the same upgrade. Currently, 5 trees planted by council have died and need replacing, and most of the trees planted by council along the service lane years ago have been removed over the past years with no replacements. A, when will Dandenong Council replace the dead trees? B, when will council replace the trees removed with new trees and guards to protect them from wasting money on needing replacing at a later date? And C, will Dandenong install flags similar to the northern entrance to Lonsdale Street? Mr Kearsley, Mr Mayor.
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr Lamaro, for the question. Council Arborist has inspected the trees on Foster Street between Thomas and Lonsdale Streets, and there are crepe myrtles and pears which are known to be deciduous. These lose their leaves in winter and can appear to be dead. Currently, these trees are just starting to come into bud, and over the next few weeks, hopefully we will see them expand into leaf. We would be happy to discuss the particular locations if Mr Lamaro can provide further details of the 5 trees that he's identified as being dead. The trees along Foster Street in this area are in a very difficult space for trees to grow. They have limited soil volume for the roots due to the surrounding hard surfaces and surfaces, and they have limited space to grow due to the canopy of the eaves of the buildings and the road clearance requirements. This means that they will never become large, old trees. Council is managing these trees to provide the best outcome possible for this particular location, and even at a smaller size trees, they can still provide benefits to the community, including shading, amenity and biodiversity. Council will continue to monitor these trees closely due to their challenging environment and respond to any changes in their health as required. With regards to the question on flagpoles, there are a number of flagpoles at the southern end or southern entrance to Lonsdale Street, opposite the playground and the Salvation Army store, and they complement those located on the northern end close to the intersection of Robinson Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kearsley. Mr. Benny?
No, please.
Thank you, Mr. Benny. Item 4, Officers' Reports, Part 2, 4.1, Contracts, 4.1.1, Contract number 2122/39, Concrete, Drainage and Asphalt Maintenance Works.
Happy to move
Moved by Councillor Garrett, second by Councillor Formoso. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 4.1.2, Contract number 2223-04, Provision of Internal Audit Services. Moved by Councillor Garrard, second by Councillor Long. Are there any questions? Councillor Milkovich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just got a question for a relevant officer. How often are these internal audits conducted?
Ms Hanson.
For you, Mayor, thanks for the question. When you refer to how often are the audits conducted, are you referring to the contract renewal or are you referring to the actual service itself?
Councillor Milkovich.
The actual services, how many times is it actually council? These services are employed by the council for the contractor. How many times do they actually do the audit per year? Is it once a year, every 6 months? In regards to what services as well?
Yeah, so on appointment of the internal audit service provider, we generally conduct around 5 audits a year.
Thank you, Ms Hanson. Is there any further questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 4.2, Finance and Budget, 4.2.1, June 2022 Financial Report Interim Results. Moved by Councillor Garrard, second by Councillor Tan. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 4.2.2, 2021-2022 Annual Financial Statements. Moved by Councillor Garrard, second by Councillor Dark. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 4.3, Policy and Strategy, 4.3.1, Draft Tree Protection on Private Property, Local Law and Tree Protection on Private Property Policy. Moved by Councillor Garrard. Second by Councillor Long. Are there any questions? Councillor Trong.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's not my question, but I think that, with when the people write the draft for this policy, should think about, the people feeling and thinking. Because, if they cut the tree in their private land, and we made the fine, made some people scared or worry to cut the tree. But also made scare and worry the people who plant some, white canopy tree, something like that. And therefore, when we draft about the policy, we think about the feeling of people, which way that we get more tree in the private land. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Trung. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Trong. At the moment, we're just voting today to put this out to consultation. So those issues around how people will apply and the issues of whether they feel scared or not can be all come back to us through the consultation process, and we can amend the policy so that we don't scare people, because we don't want to scare people. We want to encourage people to look after their trees and to have more trees. So we welcome people when they read this to tell us what they're worried about, and we will endeavour to accommodate that when we take this back and before it goes finally out as a bylaw. So it's a great question, and I think we have that sorted. If we vote today to send it out to community can tell us what they're worried about.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Is there any further questions? Is there any opposition?
Yeah, into opposition, Mayor.
Councillor Dark in opposition. Councillor Garrard, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. We all know, just turn on the news and see we're in a climate emergency. A third of Pakistan is underwater, which affects Dandenong, which affects everyone. We are seeing unprecedented temperatures in the Northern Hemisphere. We are seeing droughts, we are seeing food insecurity. The world is seriously impacted by a climate emergency. Trees are the best known way to store carbon. They protect our houses. They increase the value of our property. They protect us from extreme weather. And they are an enormous asset to our community. Our community doesn't have enough trees. We're going backwards. We're not going forwards. We're actually losing more trees than we're planting, and we cannot make that up just by planting trees in public land. We can't. We have to protect trees on private land. This is not stopping people chopping down trees if trees are causing a problem, if trees are dying, if trees are a risk, if trees are a threat. They will still be able to chop their trees down. This will not stop that. What this is saying is, as a community, we protect our trees, we value our trees are important, and we will do whatever we can to help you protect your trees on your land. That's what this is about. This is about making Dandenong a safer, more attractive, more valuable and climate resilient community. This is really important. And there is tremendous support. We saw that through previous consultation process. There's tremendous community support to protect trees on private land. So I urge my fellow councillors to support just putting this out for consultation. That's all we're doing today. Let's ask the community what they think. Let's ask the community what they want. And let's get that back and then work on that. All we're doing today is giving the community the opportunity to tell us how important trees are and what their concerns are.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Councillor Long.
Yeah, this is only going out for consultation at the moment. It will come back to council and the final decision will be council's. But we need to know what the community needs and what they want. If they don't want to have this control over their trees in their own private property, they will tell us and then we can make our decision. But let it go out to consultation first. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I rise to oppose this, and I understand that this is simply the organisation or the policy going out for consultation. But at the end of the day, one thing I know, being on council, what is turning out to be a very long time, is that once a policy goes up to consultation, very, very rarely are there any changes. And I would bet my bottom dollar if the community consultation comes back with the majority saying that they do not want trees on their private property touched, and they don't want council going around flying.
Point of order.
What's the point of order, Councillor Garrard?
That he's questioning a council process. We invest in consultation in the spirit of consultation. We do respond, so his point is irrelevant.
Councillor Dark, just refrain to let this policy go out. Let the people make up their mind and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a generic comment that I made. But nonetheless, look, so what we certainly have is some real issues that we currently have with the evolution of people invading things on people's private property. As Councillor Garrard mentioned in her first statement, the climate emergency, ecological disaster, this, that, and everything else. You'd think you were reading a Greens policy platform. And the issue is that this council needs to make sure that we are putting the right policies into place. And I understand that consultation is one of those things, but we're already hearing a lot of feedback about it. People have a right for their own private property to ensure that what they do on their property is up to them. Those that want to have a significant amount of trees and tree coverage are entitled to do so. Nobody's saying that we're going to go on their property and cut it down. Nobody's saying that we're going to go get involved. But for those who live in properties, who my ward is no different, who have a 550-odd square metre block of land with a house on it, who have got children who are the Gen Z generation, who can't afford to live in the local area, who can't afford to buy their first home, then are stuck living at home, and they have to have a look and see what options are. If we then restrain the policy and put in place that certain trees were done, the issue then you've got is there's no parking available. People are going to be parking on the streets. Infrastructure is going to become under more pressure. And the more and more issues that seem to come with that time and time again. Whilst I understand that there may be a reduction in tree coverage, Council's planting a huge amount of trees in common in public land. And we are doing a lot to recover from that. But year on year on year, we do the review and we see that there are adequate coverage, or the coverage is reducing, but trees are being planted. Trees don't grow overnight. They take a couple of years to grow. So we're not going to see the effects of what we currently have in place for several years to come. For Council to be in a position to then look at even the idea of declaring a local law to restrain people from being able to cut down trees on their own personal property, to fine them just under $4,000 per breach, as per what the Act is saying with 20 penalty units, it is something that I do not want to go out to consultation with. It is something I think this policy could do with a substantial rework, and that is why I will not be supporting this tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Milkovich.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. While I do understand Councillor Garrard's concern about climate change and warming weather and all these weather events that we got throughout the world, what I also know that our residents are also very, very concerned about a level of government interference, particularly this local government, in their lives any further. The residents already have to go through the process of planning permits, applications, if they want to do even the slightest changes to their properties. Now, where this consultation leads to is really, in effect, yet another slap on the wrist should you do something wrong. Now, if in essence this goes through, what the residents will be faced with, and a good number of our residents are elderly pensioners who don't have sufficient funds to take it further, they would be facing with a proposition of applying for a permit, which might be with a fee or without a fee. Then they would have to get an arborist report, which wouldn't be for free of charge, and only then they would be able to maybe knock the tree down or not. Now, that is a substantial burden on anyone. Now, we all know that the penalties that are being proposed, or the maximum penalty, as Councillor Dark mentioned, which is just under $4,000, is not going to deter developers, because on a multi-million-dollar project, they will knock the tree down anyway. Who's going to be hurt most by this law, if it gets introduced through the community consultation, is everyday pensioners and residents. And for that reason, I do not support this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Milkovich. Is there any further speakers? Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, the speakers against this motion notably haven't disputed climate impact, and we know from studies and science that climate will continue to have an impact across the world and in the city of Greater Dandenong, Mayor. And the single most important way that this council can make a difference, rather than just advocating to other levels of government, is in the area of retention of trees. And the majority of the trees that could be retained are on private land. So if council can add a level of friction to large trees being removed, if council can compel people to think twice before the chainsaw is taken to what we know as so important to maintain a healthy climate, then I believe at least we should ask the public about it, Mayor. Council currently has a lot to say regarding trees and land use through development permits now, and nobody said that that's a bad thing. So, as a community, we aren't just a whole lot of self-interested, or we shouldn't be, a whole lot of self-interested property owners that don't look beyond our own boundaries. We live in a community and we are responsible to each other. This motion is just about a draft policy, asking the public if the public believes that this is the way forward to mitigate heat islands and climate effects in our municipality. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Councillor Tan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question to the relevant officer. Just in this report here regarding to financial implications, saying that this report is not it's going to cost anything. So, but the cost of the consultation can be accommodated within existing budgets. So how much is the budget relating to this project? Thanks.
Mr. Bosman.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the point is, Councillor, the administration work, the work by officers to have drafted it, the work by officers to put it out to consultation, to consider that and to bring it back to council is part of our operational budget. It's, you know, it's salaries, it's any work that we might ultimately need in terms of consultation, etc. So it's very difficult to isolate a component of budget. It becomes part of what we do as work as normal. It's part of our work that we are currently doing amongst a range of many other things that we are producing. So what I'm saying in the report, it's covered within our budget. I'm not going to be seeking additional money to continue with the process of going out into community consultation, assessing that and bringing it back to council. It's covered within our existing operational budgets. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bosman. Are there any further questions? If there's no further questions, right to reply, Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Mayor. There were a couple of inaccuracies in Councillor Dark's opposition. We are only, this only applies to a certain circumference of tree. This does not apply to all trees. Under the Planning Act, if people are building, and I assume that's what Councillor Dark was talking about, it was a little obscure, but if they're building, then they are subject to the planning laws, which are quite different. In terms of congestion of traffic, I'm not quite sure what that was really getting at there. But the really important thing to reinforce is that we're at about 8% going backwards. His point that we can plant enough trees in public land, clearly we can't. We've tried that, it's not working. We're clearly going backwards. A recent scan has shown that we're dramatically going backwards. The only way we can progress the amount of canopy cover in the city of Dandenong is to retain trees on private land. No one is wanting to cause hardship to anyone. If people are unable to afford the cost of an application, we have hardship provisions. This is not about hurting anyone. This is not about trapping people in distress in our community. This is about valuing trees for everyone. As Councillor O'Reilly so rightly said, this is about everyone. This is about the whole community. This is about making us all safer and our properties worth more. It's about actually protecting us from what will to come, which are going to be increasing temperatures and increasing more violent storms. So it's an important thing to do, and I don't think there's much substance actually in Councillor Dark's opposition.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. Councillor Tan, Councillor Trung, Councillor O'Reilly, Councillor Garrard, Councillor Long, Councillor Meti, Councillor Formoso and Councillor Lim. All those against? Councillor Milkovich and Councillor Dark. Motion is carried 8-2. Next item, councillors, 4.3.2, Gambling Policy Review, incorporating the Alliance for Gambling Reform.
Mayor,
Councillor O'Reilly.
Mayor, I have an alternate motion there.
Do you want to read your alternate motion?
Thank you, Mayor. The motion is as printed in the agenda, except that it removes in the gambling policy page 6, section 4.4. It removes 4 sentences that have been distributed to councillors. I won't go through the wording of all of those, but that is my alternate motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Councillor O'Reilly has moved an alternate motion. Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Second by Councillor Dark. Are there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? Councillor Garrard in opposition. Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, we have the gambling policy review document with us, and I believe that all councillors, as far as I know, support the intentions and should and do understand the harmful impacts or the impacts of harmful gambling in this municipality, given that this municipality is one of the lowest income and highest losses from harmful gambling. And I certainly stand with all councillors that wish to advocate to attack, reduce, eliminate that harmful gambling, Mayor. So we're all on this. I believe we're all on the same page in that regard. What my motion does is remove the particular sentences that infer that clubs or organisations supported by council are also discouraged from accepting gambling monies, and my motion also removes the sentences that say that council does not, or venues that have electronic gaming machines are not preferred by this council as far as holding events, and if and when they arise, financial partnerships. Mayor, so to use the example of our RSLs, Springvale, Noble Park and Dandenong RSLs, this council has a good relationship with them. I don't think we should be putting it down in black and white that we no longer prefer holding events on those premises, and we no longer want to have any sort of financial partnership as far as what might be good programs. So I think my motion fully endorses the policy, apart from being seen to marginalise EGM venues within Greater Dandenong, many of whom do many good things. It will be counterproductive to what we want to achieve. We should be constructively engaging with venues that have electronic gaming machines rather than not preferring them for particular activities, and this council shouldn't be putting the blinkers on and seeing things in black and white, but should pursue a nuanced, strategic advocacy towards eliminating and reducing harmful gambling from EGMs. And would it not be hypocritical, Mayor, that the Victorian government receives a lot of money, a lot of gambling money, and we're happy to receive funding from the Victorian government when we receive funding there, but we're saying to small organisations like the Springvale Benevolent Society, you have to do what, or we prefer that you do this, otherwise, you're potentially, it may be inferred that your support of council is at risk. That's how it may be misinterpreted, Mayor. So let's be strategic when we're advocating to reduce gambling harm, and not be ideological and blinkered in our approach. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I rise to support this motion from Councillor O'Reilly, and I think it's a sensible amendment or alternate, I suppose, if you could put in place. There's no question that my position on the Alliance of Gambling Reform is that it's an organisation which has completely lost its way. But nonetheless, for the idea of this notice of motion and for the alternate, I do agree with it. There is no question in this municipality we have got a significant amount of community clubs who are vital sources of income for our local sports groups. The Dandenong Club provides a significant amount of financial support to the local cricket clubs, local sports clubs, local football clubs, and the same thing down with Club Noble in Noble Park in the area that I used to represent. Club Noble provides a significant amount of support for local communities. It's an asset that this council should be proud of. It's an asset that is invested heavily in. It has state-of-the-art facilities and areas you do not see that many other municipalities have in place. And this would not be anywhere near where it would be. The clubs in the area, the lawn bowls clubs, the tennis club, the soccer clubs, the football clubs, will be nowhere near where they would be in terms of their level of competitiveness and the support that they have without the support of poker machines, without the support of the EGMs. The same thing with the RSL clubs in Noble Park, in Springvale and in Dandenong. They do provide a substantial amount of support for the older generation who may not be able to support themselves or assistance. The services that they provide, particularly at the moment, dealing with the mental issues that people have come back from war. The war in Afghanistan is leaving, no doubt, a substantial trail of people with substantial mental health issues. And these community groups are vital for our community. They provide material support for the people who in our community need it the most. The Springvale Benevolent Society, who the Rikikis go out day in, day out and provide meals and supplies for people who need them. And whether we like it or not, they are reliant upon donations that come from the community. And they are. And there's no question about it. And the people like the Sandown Greyhounds, like the RSLs, like some of the ALH venues that provide financial assistance to ensure that our most vulnerable are taken care of is something that makes complete sense. And to then go and have a policy in place that says that council's not going to support you because you receive funding from electronic gaming machine-based venues, they're not going to support you and basically you're going to cut you loose and best of luck. And the same thing with staff functions and community events that this council holds as well. They should be in the facilities that represent them. Basically, what you've got in the policy, as what's worded prior to Councillor Riley's alternate, is that in the event, say we had Noble Park Football Club, and Noble Park Football Club were the winners of a trophy, and they wanted to host an event at Club Noble, we wouldn't be able to accommodate that. And that's just absolutely ludicrous. So I think that the best thing is Councillor Riley's alternate. I think it has a sense of balance between the two things that we have within the community, and I think it achieves good outcomes to support our local community clubs who are vital for this money.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, a core business of local government is the health and welfare of our community. So in any way aiding and abetting the predatory gambling industry does not deliver on that. $103 million was ripped out of our community just in 1 year. A low-income community that cannot stand to lose that loss. That is coming from families, that is coming from paying mortgages, that is taking the food off the table of children. $103 million. This is not a benign industry. This is not an industry that cares about your community groups. The gambling industry do not care about your community group. They are there to make money, and they have spent millions exploiting the neurobiology of addiction. And there's very good reason why you don't see a clock or sunshine when you're sitting in a gambling venue, because they have that perfectly suited to keep you there losing money. Money people cannot afford to lose. Let's separate out the value of sporting clubs. No one is refuting that community and sporting clubs and RSLs are of great value to our community. They offer social connectedness and are of great value. This very weekend, in the media it was reported that the RSL and the AFL clubs have gone to the state government begging to be taken away from the gambling industry. They are begging the state government to give them a way out, to buy back their licences and to throw them away, because they know that the conflict between caring for community and exploiting their members through a gambling option is contradictory. They know that they are not caring for their community, and for the paltry amount of money that they are given back to these community centres, they are making millions. And you and I and everyone here is paying for that. So they privatise the profits and socialise the losses. We are paying billions in the social harm done through gambling, through family services support, through financial support, through mental health support. But most importantly, there's a very strong link between gambling and mental health, and a very strong link between mental health and suicide. Gambling makes everything worse. Gambling creates financial difficulties. Gambling ruins relationships and increases the risk of suicide, particularly in young men. So we should not, as a council, stand aside and support in any way this industry. And let's read the wording here. We're not saying they cannot do these things. We're not saying they must not do these things. We are saying we discourage them. Discourage. How is discourage stopping them? We're not saying, we're not stopping these people still working within a gambling environment. We're saying we discourage you. We discourage the council from supporting a gambling sector which is predatory and which takes money out of a poor community that we cannot afford to lose. It causes real harm. It causes real harm to families. It causes suicide in young men, and it's documented and it's clear. We as a council need to show leadership and discourage, just discourage, dissuade. Discourage, dissuade. We need to do that. So I oppose this amendment on those grounds.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Is there any further speakers? Councillor Trung.
I think, sometimes some club, pocket club or something like that, give money to some association, but you have to think where the money comes from. Money comes from the poor people family, and the people in poor family, they be addicted to the money than the rich people. And you can see that, my family is a victim of gambling. And you can see that when I make example to talk to my ex-wife, and then my first wife with the 4 children, and she cried. And about a few minutes, few minutes crying, maybe 1 or 2 hours later, she involved with gambling again. Addiction is too strong, and the people cannot go out, especially the poor people. When you can get 5,000, 10,000 from pocket machine company or something like that, but where the money come from? Not come from their pocket, from poor people's pocket. And like the people play at the pocket machine, they not only lose money, they lose their time as well. They don't have to spend time to look after the family. Maybe they left the children about 10 hours at home. Maybe children under the 5 years old or something like that at home. Because, they don't worry much about the family, because with addiction like that is very dangerous. Therefore, we think about money, 5,000, 10,000 for like a Civic, but we have to think about where the money comes from. And therefore, I think I against any form of gambling, because that is very dangerous and that harm too much to the families and also communities.
Thank you, Councillor Trung. Are there any further speakers? If there's no further speakers, right a reply, Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, replying to what I thought would be opposition to a motion, Mayor, I actually agree with everything that Councillor Garrard and Councillor Trung said. I think absolutely spot on. That about the ravages of gambling and harmful gambling in particular. What they didn't do in opposing the motion, Mayor, is actually address what my motion seeks to do. So, Mayor, they didn't speak, well, Councillor Garrard did mention clubs not accepting EGM monies, etc. But on the whole, there wasn't a great deal of opposition to my points. They were talking about opposing gambling per se. My point, Mayor, is that if this council comes across as opposing gambling EGM venues and demonising them as venues for operating within the law and regulations regarding gambling, then we are weakening what could be a strategic, nuanced advocacy towards eliminating harmful gambling, not gambling per se. So we need to, as a council, we need to be smart and strategic, not ideological against gambling and depicting EGM venues as purveyors of something evil. So I would ask councillors to support my motion. It is again thrusting along the lines, I believe, that Councillor Garrard and Councillor Trung were speaking about. However, it just refines it so that we are not alienating very reputable organisations in our community, and it's a sensible approach to how this council should approach our anti-gambling stance in concert with other councils. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. All those in favour of the alternate motion, please raise your hand. Councillor Tan, Councillor O'Reilly, Councillor Milkovich and Councillor Dark, that's 4. All those against the alternate motion, Councillor Trung, Councillor Garrard, Councillor Long, Councillor Mameti, Councillor Formoso and Councillor Lim. The alternate motion is lost 4-6. So, councillors, I'll go back to Councillor Garrard.
Mayor, I'd like to put forward the original recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. So 4.3.2, Gambling Policy Review, incorporating the Alliance for Gambling Reform, moved by Councillor Garrard. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Second by Councillor Formosa. Do we have any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? Councillor Dark in opposition. Councillor Garrard. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to reiterate the points that gambling is harmful. We don't want to harm our community. We want a strong, resilient, healthy community. Gambling is in no way associated with a strong and healthy community. We want to make sure that we are not exposing vulnerable individuals who are going through financial stress, relationship stress, and who are experiencing a myriad of stresses, who are being lured into social venues where they go to meet people, and then are being lured into a gambling setting which is absolutely designed from beginning to end to promote addiction. So people may start off by having the odd flutter the odd bet. But pretty soon that progresses, particularly when mental health issues are involved, and that progresses, and suddenly we have an addiction situation, and we have financial stress, and then we have relationship breakup, and then we have a myriad of problems. And importantly, we have $103 million ripped out of our community, money that could be paying for children's welfare, paying for a roof over their head. So we cannot, as a council, in any way support or align ourselves with a predatory industry. And that is why we are with the Gambling Reform Alliance, and that is why we are making a contribution. So in any way weakening that means that we are not being compliant with the Alliance reform agenda, and it's incredibly important that we are consistent with that. The whole world is turning its back on electronic machines. The RSL industry, the AFL sporting clubs, they are all begging the state government to wean them off this addictive, harmful, predatory industry. We as council, as local government, we need to follow suit. We need to read the room. We are moving away from this. There's no other country that has as many electronic machines as us. We are unique, and we are milking and exploiting the weakness and vulnerability in our community of those that can least afford to lose that amount of money. And we are exposing them to harm. And as a council, we can't support that. We are here for the health and welfare of our community. And there is no way that any part of the gambling sector is in any way contributing to the health and welfare of our community.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Councillor Formosa.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe my fellow colleague, Councillor Garrett, has summed everything up. We are basically saying that nowhere in the policy does it say that we are preventing, we are simply discouraging. We are the third highest rate of financial loss in the entire metropolitan Melbourne. We have the most vulnerable members in our community. We are certainly able to find support financially from other means, in particular sporting clubs. I don't think I would ever encourage one of my children to attend a sporting club that was promoting or deriving its revenue from EGMs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Formosa. Councillor Dark, in opposition.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, we're listening to the opposition from Councillor Garrard and Councillor Formosa. While we're at it, we should look at banning McDonald's, because the predatory behaviour that they offer with their bright flashing lights and fat food and everything else they covers. And Councillor Formosa is one to rant on about fruit and vegetables and anti-fast food, so I'm sure she can offer 2 cents worth. At the end of the day, in this municipality, $103 million may be the total amount lost, but not every single person that puts $1 into a pokie machine in this municipality is an addict, is a gambler, is suffering from issues. A lot of the senior citizens groups in this municipality, they meet, and they meet at these venues because of the support they get, the discounted meals and support that they have to encourage them to get out and socialise. And I've seen at many events I've been through over my council term that one or two or an old couple that go and get putting $10 into the pokies and see if it ends up. Sometimes they're successful, sometimes they aren't. They cash out with their receipt, they get their money and they go on their day. Maybe they've been able to get a free lunch, maybe they'll get other amounts. But the way that Councillor Garrard is portraying any single person that attends a licensed venue in this municipality is some sort of person suffering from substantial mental distress, has a massive gambling issue, you need help. And the losses that are accumulated do not account, because they cannot account for those that have substantial issues. They cannot account for those that are gambling addicts. And there is no question that there are issues with people who suffer from substantial illnesses, and people who are problem gamblers do have impacts. There is no question about that at all. But compared to all the people that I know that go to the RSLs, that go to the sports clubs, that put money into the pokies, that bet on online games, that bet on their apps like Sportsbet, like Ladbrokes and many other apps, they are people who don't have gambling addictions, but they enjoy the bet. They operate within the confines of the law. They don't become a mega issue on the community. They don't have any issues after that. Sometimes you win money, sometimes you lose money. That's just the fact of the game, and that is the way that the systems work. Now, whether or not that's predatory behaviour, I'm not sure. That's for somebody else that's a specialist in the field to be able to determine. But people have a right to go out to licensed venues to do what they need to do. The same way that people have the right to go out and go to a bottle shop and buy alcohol and drink. As long as it's not in a public place, they can go home and drink for all they like. But does that make them an alcoholic? No, it doesn't. People go out on a Friday, Saturday night, Sunday night in some cases, and they go out and hit town and they have drinks. Does that make them an alcoholic? Not necessarily. But if they're going out and enjoying a social gathering, it's a possibility. But here you are, we have right now one small group of people that are problem gamblers. And you have Councillor Garrard wailing on, making it a massive issue, saying that every single person that goes and puts money into a poker machine is very, very, very bad. And that is not correct. This policy, whilst it may say it discourages, basically gives a veto saying, nah, that's it, that's the end of that, no more. And that is a real issue that I have with this policy, and that is why I will not be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Are there any further speakers? Councillor O'Reilly.
Thanks, Mayor. Might as well have a second crack. Repeat a couple of points. Mayor, understand everybody has the right intentions here as far as what we want to achieve, but if this policy is passed as written, this council will be doing itself a great disservice, and perhaps it's naivety or inexperience, but passing the policy to shun local venues and organisations will do nothing to stop or stem harmful gambling there. Do nothing. It's a nice statement to shout about in a council chamber, but no impact on harmful gambling. All it will do is say to these venues, council doesn't want to hold, prefers not to come to your places. Council doesn't agree that you give money to sporting clubs and charities in CGD. We would prefer that you give it to organisations outside CGD so that we are morally pure. And those clubs and organisations suffer, Mayor, because of this council's extreme stance on this issue. So I'd prefer that council is more nuanced and strategic on this matter, and as I pointed out previously, the biggest receiver of gambling money in this state is the Victorian government, and if councillors are happy to be hypocritical in receiving funding from the Victorian government, then go ahead, but it's a sad day. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Are there any further speakers? If there's no... Councillor Tan.
Thank you, Mayor. I do support the actual, most overall draft, but the only thing I do not support is when council will discourage organising activities involving staff or residents at the EGM gambling venues. So this part here I will not support, which means that will discourage the whole draft. So we have to come up with a different alternate solution for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tan. Are there any further speakers? If there's no further speakers, right of reply, Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I haven't heard any convincing arguments that that supports the watering down of this policy in any way. I think we're all very clear. I think we're all on the same page. No one believes gambling is good. That lean gambling can move very quickly into serious gambling, and we all pay a price for that. The important thing is, what is our role in council? Our role is as a leadership role, So we're not saying that these venues cannot do these things. We're discouraging them because we're taking a stand. Because we're part of the Gambling Reform Alliance and we're taking a stand. We're taking a stand with 16 other councils. The City of Kingston are just reducing their electronic games numbers from 1,200 to 900, and they're going to keep that going further down. The City of Manningham brought the local RSL to save it from the predatory gambling industry. Councillors across this state understand how predatory and how harmful this industry is. And all we are doing today with this policy is saying we support the health and wellbeing of our community. And we want to support clubs to get out of this predatory gambling industry. And that will happen as the RSL and the AFL are now advocating, begging the state government to release them from the clutches of this predatory industry. We're all on the same page. Nobody wants our sporting clubs to be aligned with a harmful sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gerard. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. Councillor Trung, Councillor Gerard, Councillor Long, Councillor Mehmeti, Councillor Formoso, Councillor Lim. I think that was 6. All in opposition, please raise your hand. Councillor Tan, Councillor Milkovich and Councillor Dark. I'm not sure, did you vote, Councillor O'Reilly? Abstain. So 6-3 and with 1 abstain. Motion is carried. Councillors, we'll move on to item 4.4, other, 4.4.1, draft minutes of Multicultural and People Seeking Asylum Advisory Committee meeting on the 2nd of August 2022. Moved by Councillor O'Reilly, second by Councillor Garrard. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 4.4.2, draft minutes of the Springvale Community Hub Committee meeting on the 2nd of August 2022, moved by Councillor Lim, second by Councillor O'Reilly. Are there any questions? Question, Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. Noted in the minutes that there was some discussion about the continuance of the committee. I believe the term may be coming to an end. Just to the relevant director, Mayor, how will that decision be made regarding continuance, and will that be brought to council or councillors? Thank you.
Mr Devine.
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you for the question, Councillor O'Reilly. I'll need to review the terms of reference for that working group, Councillor, and provide a more detailed response. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Devine. Are there any further questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 4.4.3, draft minutes of the Community Safety Advisory Committee meeting on the 10th of August 2022, moved by Councillor Garrard, second by Councillor Lim. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 4.4.4, report on matters discussed at councillor briefing sessions and pre-council meetings.
Happy to
Moved by
that,
Councillor
Mayor.
Formosa, second by Councillor Garrard. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 4.4.5, list of registered correspondence to Mayor and councillors. Moved by Councillor Trung, second by Councillor Long. Are there any questions? Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, the first question I have this evening, close to the microphone then. The first question I have this evening is to do with Moodimir Scout Group. The question to do with the lighting upgrades at the reserve and to do with the safety of I suppose, the local area nearby. One of a former council employee, actually maybe still a current council employee, had an issue a couple of years back where this, late at night, she was packing up chairs after a scout meeting and she was attacked by an individual who was later charged, found by the police and charged. And I do know that this is quite a dark area at the end of the street. The Moodymere Scout Group has been doing a lot of work trying to recruit for new scouts to join it. They are very, very dedicated, and I would hope that we would be able to, I suppose, review it sooner rather than later to ensure that there is adequate lighting to ensure the public safety is being protected.
Either Mr. Bosman or Mr. Kearsley. Mr. Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor. This covers a couple of areas, so I think you may have seen a response from Jane Brodie in the last 48 hours, which covers the issue of the lighting being included in a broader master plan response. However, I've asked my team in terms of the provision of lights with regards to lighting assessments to actually bring that forward, because I think, Councillor, you sent me a photo and it looks dark. The photo really shows some issues, I think. So that's something that, whilst Ms Brodie has answered in terms of the master plan process, we'll see what we can do with regards to having a look at the installation of some other form of lighting.
Thank you, Mr. Kearsley. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, my next question is, we received some correspondence from the Minister for Local Government regarding the Public Libraries Funding Program 22-23. I just want to find out from the relevant director, given that library funding is very, very important to our community, what the outcome is and what the Minister is projecting.
Mr. Devine.
Through you, Mr Mayor, and thanks for the question, Councillor Dark. The funding received from the state government is in accordance with the dollars included in Council's long-term financial strategy, so it is what officers were expecting.
Thank you, Mr. Devine. Are there any further questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 5, notice of motion. There are none. Item 6, reports from councillors, delegated members and councillor questions. Councillor Tan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, just want to report some of the events I attended to from the last council meeting, 23rd of August to the 11th of September. So on the 28th of August, I attended the ONAM 2022, which is hosted by the Malay Association of Victoria. Just want to say congratulations to the organisation. They've done a great job. So on a day, there was about 1,300 people attend, which is full of halls. So and the organiser also want to request if we can get any bigger venue for next year as well. So we're looking to get something. Also with the state government, if they're requesting to do something bigger than what we have at our Springvale City Hall. So hopefully there is something in the future is bigger than the City Hall. On the 3rd of September, I attended the Mid-Autumn Festival, which is hosted by the Golden Flowers Chinese Friendship Association. And the 9th of September, I also attended the Mid-Autumn Fest, hosted by the Harvey Chamber of Commerce. So for the first question for tonight, so you Mayor, so the relevant officer, just regarding to a request from my resident, who's also excited about the opening of the gymnasium, Wellbeing Gymnasium and PACS by the end of this year. Also just want to know, in terms of costing, when we can publish that on the website. Thanks.
Mr. Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Mayor. As we understand, that project is due for completion at the beginning of December, and there will be a handover to South East Leisure because they'll be the people who operate. I'll have a conversation with my friend to my left here in terms of the relationship with SEL to ensure that they get their pricing out as soon as is possible, and I would imagine they're probably working on that now. We understand they want a fairly big opening with regards to attracting as many people as possible, because it will be a very, very large gym for people to attend. So it's going to be one of the best in the region. So I'll take part of that on notice and we'll discuss it with Mr Devine.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Tan.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Second question, just regarding to stray cats. So I do have a few questions regarding to, residents that got a lot of stray cats, especially lost and found. So just in terms of, through you, Mayor, through the relevant officer, please, could you explain what's the actual process at the moment? I know we're short of staff as well with this department. Usually the resident contact some organisation that's, in terms of cats foster, and they're not really capable of managing, in terms of conditions to do with animal welfare. So in terms of our process, what do we do with the stray cats and lost and found, stuff like that? Thanks.
Mr Bosman.
Mr Mayor, through yourself, stray cats is quite a difficult situation. Obviously, those stray cats that are trapped and are really stray or feral cats will be taken to the pound, and we have that process, whether they're stray cats or stray dogs, they get dealt with in the pound. I don't know whether you're also talking about cats that are fostered, Councillor Tan, and we are looking at a process where we can have cat fosterers. At the moment, I think there might only be one person in our municipality that provides that. But stray cats, and you will have seen all of that information and the data come through on our domestic animal management plan and the discussion around introducing the cat curfew. It's all around how we get to a point where we have a reduction in the number of stray cats. What we need to do to put in place the reduction in both feral and stray cats, and then how we do manage going forward once we do have a situation of cats that are either trapped or handed in for fostering. So there is no straight answer to your question, other than to say when it comes to fostering, there are very few opportunities for fostering of any form of stray cats. Stray cats that are caught or that are trapped are generally taken to the pound, and the ones that are feral would be put down, would be euthanized. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Tan.
So in terms of getting the trap, so do they get refund right away, or what's the process with the trap?
Mr Bosman.
Mr Mayor, through yourself, Councillor, the answer is yes. If the cat trap is returned and it's returned undamaged, then the bond that is held for that, the deposit that is held for that cat trap is returned immediately.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Tan. Councillor Trung.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Because last 2 weeks I'm very busy to work with Civic for the Lantern Festival. I prepare the show gift and show bag, and also lantern and electricity system, and also many things for them. These times, Civic the first time, try to organize the Lantern Festival by themselves. That means they did not ask, council provide the fund for them, and they pay by themselves. But very good events. People and children come from many ethnic backgrounds, not only Vietnamese, and too many people came there. Come up around 8,000 people at the time, and we play like face painting, balloon, then draw and color, and have a give prize for them. And also we intend to make the lantern parade, but because the raining come at 5. However, even the raining come and the people try to stand, maybe over 200 people try to stand to the end of the time at 7. And we were very happy with the people coming and, join with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Trung. Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. a few events, the Dandenong and District Historical Society at, dare I say it, the Dandenong Club. That was good to see them back into it and getting organised again. The Mid-Autumn Mooncake Festival, Chinese community, Springvale Town Hall was full. Had yourself, Deputy Mayor Foster, Councillor Tan, Councillor Lim, and several Monash councillors, and apparently Monash Council funded or part funded that event, which was good to see them fund an event in Greater Dandenong. Had the 60th AGM of the Springvale Benevolent Society with yourself and Councillor Lim. I also was late to Councillor Truong's Lantern Festival yesterday, but we're still going strong. And as Councillor Truong said, a great cross-section of the community, and it was activating Burton Park really well. And finally, I went to the Alex Wilkie Nature Reserve spring thing to see the Springvale steamers going off and all the rest of it. That's all I've got to report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, after 2 long years, a very persistent group of residents in Keysborough South have finally managed to organise a market. They have tried and failed and tried and failed over the 2 years that we've had with Covert, and finally it's happening this Sunday. And so I would invite everybody to come along. It's going to be a fantastic day. Entertainment, ballet dancing, music, great food, but it's all about getting the community together, and a disconnected community. It's just about having fun, getting back together and reconnecting, and it's a not-for-profit event. So that's being held at the Tatterson Pavilion, the Pavilion in Tatterson Park, and it's on this Sunday at 10 a.m.
Looking forward
Mayor, it's also been reported that the residents in the southeast have had a cost of living increase of about 5%. The figures came out this week, which is showing that there is increasing stress on the families out the southeast corridor of around about 5%, cost of living in terms of fuel costs and food and mortgages and so on. However, anecdotally, it is heartening to see that people are saying they're coming to Dandenong Market to shop, because it's considerably reducing their cost of living, their food bills, and providing access to healthy food. So I think it just reinforces how important the market is and how important it is that we continue to provide low-cost, high-quality food for our community. So my first question tonight is, what advocacy is the City of Greater Dandenong going to undertake in the lead up to the election to close the Lyndhurst toxic waste dump? This has been an issue that's concerned the community for a very long time, and what level of advocacy are we going to put against this?
Mr Bosman.
Mr Mayor, thank you through yourself, Councillor Garrett. While the Council's desire to see the site closed, and closed as soon as possible, isn't in our advocacy document per se, like many other matters that the Council advocates on, the closure of the Lyndhurst landfill site will continue to be one of those that we advocate for at every opportunity, and we've been doing this over a period of years. That it isn't in the document on the website does not mean that we are any less committed to seeing the closure of it as soon as possible. On 2 recent occasions, Council has written to the Minister for Planning on this very matter, including a letter from the Mayor on the 2nd of September 2020, advocating for that any new planning applications on the site be refused, because the Minister is the responsible authority for that site, not the Council. And then for the landfill to be closed as soon as possible. As I say, that was from the Mayor as recently as the 2nd of September. We shall still avail ourselves of advocacy opportunities in any meetings that we have with candidates in the upcoming state elections, with state government officials, with officers. It's something that has been, as you said, Councillor, an issue with our community for in excess of 2 decades. And it is something that we do not miss an opportunity. There will never be an opportunity that we miss in order to advocate for it. And as I say, even recently in correspondence with the Minister and with officers of the state government, we've made that again a clear position. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Garrard.
Could I ask that we could formally add it to the advocacy document? I understand you're doing work behind the scenes, but it's good for the community to understand the work that we're doing on this really important issue as well.
Mr Bosman.
Mr Mayor, we can update our advocacy document. I just had a look and a nod from Ms Sprague, so we can put something together to have it as part of our formal documentation as on our advocacy document. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr Bosman. My next question, Mayor, is other councils, including a neighbouring Kingston, are starting their state election advocacy on gambling reform. This is another issue that has been where there's been a strong voice in the state on. In 2018, Greater Dandenong did a lot, including a candidates forum on gambling reduction. What do we have planned in relation to gambling harm reduction in the lead up to this election?
Mr Devine.
Through you, Mr Mayor. In 2018, Greater Dandenong City Council worked in partnership with the Alliance for Gambling Reform in the lead up to the state government election. Councillors will be aware that a report was presented to Council tonight to determine Council's position on a revised gaming policy, and based on the Council resolution tonight, Council officers will consider appropriate advocacy in the lead up to the 2022 state government election, and will communicate that to councillors, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Devine. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a follow-up question. Mr Devine, last election, in fact I participated in, was really well attended, a debate among the candidates in the state election. Would we consider doing that again? It was highly visible, and it was really well attended. Would we consider doing that again for this election?
Mr Devine.
Through you, Mr Mayor, officers will consider what was done last time and where we might be able to build on that, so that will be considered and factored in.
Thank you, Mr Devine. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Mayor. My next question is, what is the status of the Dandenong West Empowering Communities project, and when should that action plan be publicly available? Also, can an update on this project be put on the council website and in the council newsletter?
Mr Devine.
Through you, Mr Mayor. An Empowering Communities Action Group has been formed and is meeting on a regular basis to discuss the ongoing development of the action plan. Whilst Council is facilitating the process, the development of the action plan is dependent on agreement by the community. It's about empowering the community. Progress is being made, and it is anticipated that a draft action plan will be developed by the community in late October 2022. At that stage, updates will be provided on the Council website, and other promotion will be undertaken to communicate that plan.
Thank you, Mr Devine. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, what are the timeframes for the Gathering Place feasibility study to be made public?
Mr Devine.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Further to the Council briefing on the 18th of July, Council officers continue to liaise with the Bunurong Land Council on a number of matters, including the Greater Dandenong First Nations Community Space feasibility study, and particularly opportunities in the police paddocks. Council officers are taking steps to publish the study on the Council website in conjunction with other relevant updates from the Bunurong Land Council.
Thank you, Mayor. My final question is regarding the Dandenong Aquatic Centre. We've seen a significant increase in the cost of the Aquatic Centre. Can we be informed about what this increase in cost is related to?
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Mayor. The amount of 90 million, which is currently what's stated in the advocacy document, represents an amount previously discussed with councillors in mid-February during the schematic design process. In October, next month, councillors will be briefed on the next stage of the design process, being the detailed design process, in which we will have an updated cost plan and further information regarding to ESD, mechanics and essentially the completion of the architectural design process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a follow-up question, just more of a general question to councillors. At what point does this become unaffordable for a community such as ours, which is under, as most councils are, considerable financial constraint? When does the cost blowout continue? And these are indicative costs, so we know that the final cost will be considerable more. When do we decide we can't afford this?
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mayor. Essentially, the decision-making process for any council with the adoption of this amount of funds will take place, I believe, in March and April of next year with regards to the 2023-24 budget. That would be a matter for council to discuss during that time. We're still seeking, as the Mayor knows, considerable funding from the state government to match the federal government $20 million contribution. With the election coming up soon, we're hoping that we will get some, if not all of that amount to offset council's expenditure. If not, we will continue the advocacy through to a point, essentially, when we open the door to the new facility. But as you've asked the question, really it's a matter for council to decide how it will or how it may not afford, how it constructs it, when it constructs it. All of that will be undertaken in March and April of 2023.
Thank you.
I'll just finish off, Mayor, by just saying that there are some local facilities in neighbouring municipalities that are so expensive to run that, in fact, they are not being run continuously, that the council are having to cut hours, opening hours. So we need to be really sure that, A, we can afford the capital costs, but also that the operational costs are not so in excess that we can't actually afford to run this pool. That's the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Councillor Long.
These are some of the events I've attended since my last formal meeting. During my holidays to the top end of Australia, I was able to go into Nhulunbuy in Arnhem Land, Northern Territory. It is about 670 kilometres drive from the Stuart Highway and about 550 of that very bad unmade road, not for the faint-hearted. I had the pleasure of meeting Dale Kearney, the CEO of East Arnhem Land Council, face-to-face, and Lapalung Dahamiri, the Shire President, via Teams. Lapalung was a guest speaker at the last National General Assembly that was held in Canberra in June this year. The area that the Shire covers is 35,000 square kilometres, with an Indigenous population of 10,000 from 25 mobs. The council has 14 councillors who, like us, are elected for a 4-year term. The Shire President does not have a car from the Shire because the distances he has to travel, he is flown everywhere. Can you just imagine driving these distances? On the 27th of August, I attended the Dandenong District Historical Society Welcome Back Luncheon. That night I attended the Dakan Community Group Massey Night, raising funds for the Valamanese Boys' Home in Fiji. 31st of August, I attended the Father's Day lunch at the Italian Spanish Club. 5th of September, I attended the funeral of Auntie Margaret Gardner. The service was held in Dandenong. Then we went to Corrindurk, Healesville, for the burial. Auntie Margaret was an elder in the Aboriginal community and did a lot of great work on different projects for the community. She'll be sadly missed. On the 8th of September, I attended the Father's Day lunch with the Napoli Family Club. 10th of September, I attended the official opening of the baseball, softball, batting cage and dugouts at the police paddocks. And on the 11th of September, I attended the half-yearly meeting of the Noble Park RSL. And I have got one question for tonight, which is unusual for me to have a question. I've had a lot of complaints about the temporary traffic lights at the corner of Ian Street and Mons Parade Noble Park. They are saying that some people are ignoring the red light and are afraid there will be a serious accident at this site. Can anything be done to reduce the possibility of such an accident?
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor. And just happens to be that I drove through that intersection yesterday on the right side of the road and waiting for the red to go. Sorry, on the left side. I understand the confusion that would come from that, having just driven through it. I'll take that up with the officers first thing in the morning. Unfortunately, there's not too much that can be done necessarily about behaviour if people are impatient or can't wait. I'd be hoping, though, that the works in that street actually are finish on time and actually finish quickly so that we can get in, do the work and get out. But I'll take that on notice and I'll get back to you on that one.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Long.
Yeah, I was really involved in a head-on there. I had the green light to go through and a car come flying in from under the rail line and come flying round the corner. I had nowhere to go, but luckily we stopped in time and we didn't hit. But it is a dangerous area there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Councillor Formosa.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to welcome two wonderful Dandy High students, Year 11 students, Samron and Crystal, who were very busy studying in the library when I just caught them in the foyer. So I encourage them to come in and see what the chambers are like and what local government is all about. So welcome. I hope one day this will encourage you to be standing here and doing the same for your community. First question tonight is in regards to Barry Power Master Plan. Where are we at? I'm getting a lot of residents asking me the question, and to be fair, I probably would like to know what's happening with that. So if the appropriate officer could please respond.
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mayor, I have a response which is partially being drafted by both Mr Bosman's team and my group. So I can advise that as part of the current 22-23 financial year City Improvement Program, there is a provision to undertake design for the netball, basketball and multi-court playing courts. The new court design is being undertaken in conjunction with the design of the future new sports pavilion, as the two projects are intrinsically linked for both the sports clubs and the public use. We expect the design for the courts will be completed by the end of February 2023, and we'll use that design to submit a budget bid process for council consideration as part of the 23-24 financial year's budget deliberations in around March, April of next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Formosa.
Thanks, Mr Kearsley. Good to get an update on that one. Another thing that I wanted to mention, and the girls will know very well about this particular topic, Council is running a vaping education parent evening at Springvale Hub on the Wednesday the 14th of September, which I really encourage and support. However, I'm just wondering if there's any information in different languages for parents to facilitate this meeting, and if there are people that want to attend, are we going to provide the appropriate translators for this? And again, really happy that we are focusing on this, as vaping has become a huge issue in our community, in particular at local high schools. So I'm wondering if we're also offering the same sort of program for our youth, whether that be over the school holidays or, whether that be at the school holidays or at another time, please.
I think that's for two parts. Mr Devine and probably Ms Prague. Mr Devine.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor, and thanks for the question. In regard to the first matter regarding the vaping forum, we'll gladly look at options in terms of how we can promote that event in a number of different languages, and also the use of interpreters. I will take the balance of it on notice, and we'll get back in touch in terms of arrangements.
Okay, thank you. I think you've answered that, Mr Devine. Councillor Formosa.
Thanks for that, Mr Devine. Really important issue that we're facing in our community. Another matter I would like to bring up is the condition of the service lane on Princess Highway from Necropolis to Eleonora Road. It's actually quite shocking and has been for quite some time, and I just think it was the norm and we kind of accept it because it's an industrial area and so on. But I'm noticing damaged roads, damaged pavement, broken signs, broken road signs. It's just looking really, really untoward. And I was wondering if we could start having a conversation with the companies that are along that service lane and how we can work with them to improve the presentation of this area, because it is looking worse for wear. So I'd really, if the appropriate officer could respond, I'm also happy to be in those conversations.
Mr. Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mayor. Certainly, I think we can certainly go out and have a look with regards to any improvements that need to be made to the street, and also try and understand why it's happening and if it's related to any of those businesses. And we can certainly keep you in contact if you want to participate in those meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Kearsley. Councillor Formoso.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. Thanks, Mr. Kearsley. And talking on that same topic of the look of the municipality, shopping trolleys are a huge, huge nuisance in this municipality. I don't know why we have so many of them roaming through our municipality, but there's too many of them. I'm getting complaints from residents all the time about hotspots within our, particularly my ward, but in our municipality overall. I really think we need to start enforcing some more issues, some more infringement notices with this, and if we can start working and cooperating with the supermarkets and ensuring that they are actually collecting these trolleys, because it's really, really ugly to look at and I'm sick and tired of it. It's a hazard, they're ugly, and there's just way too many of them in our municipality. If the appropriate officer could respond.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Through yourself, Councillor Formosa, I don't think that Greater Dandenong is much worse off when it comes to shopping trolleys than other municipalities. Even the inner suburbs, the more, let's say, more affluent suburbs, suffer the same plight with trolleys. It seems to be a trolley virus out there. Abandoned shopping trolleys do seem to be more of an issue in central Dandenong than in the other. Of course, you talked about across the municipality. It does seem to be more of an issue in central Dandenong than in the other activity centres, and that's probably because of the size and the offering of retail within central Dandenong. The days of the week that it tends to be more prevalent is on Monday, and that's obviously because over the weekend, there's been shopping, we've had people at the market, etc. So on a Monday, together with the bins collection, etc., in the area around the municipality, it does seem to stand out more on a Monday, giving overall a less desirable look to the area. You asked about then what arrangements, or could we make arrangements with the supermarkets? We have those arrangements, and in fact the arrangements are that they do a sweep of the central business district and a radius of 1 kilometre of the central business district every 2 days. We have a system through our local laws, of marking up trolleys, and if a trolley is not collected within 48 hours, and we have a way of knowing whether that particular trolley has been there for more than 48 hours or not, then there is a form of action, a form of enforcement that is taken. It's fair to say that during COVID, with the drop-off of staff and the constraints of COVID, the issue of trolleys certainly was more noticeable. There was a greater issue with the amenity, with the lack of amenity around trolleys. That is slowly improving as more resources become available to the supermarkets. But we do generally have a good working relationship with them. It is something that is high on the operational list of our local laws officers, and hopefully with the increased resources that the supermarkets now say that they're managing to achieve, we will start seeing an improvement in the non-abandonment of trolleys. But I don't believe it's something that we or any other council is ever going to be able to fully eradicate. it's something that unfortunately is going to be there. And contrary to popular belief, and we've got quite a lot of stats, we've got a lot of data and a lot of stats on this, is that the majority of perpetrators of abandoning trolleys, in fact, are not in the younger age groups, they're in the older age groups. So, you know, there's a lot of work that we do work on, a lot of things that we do. As you yourself well know, Councillor, we've got CCTV, we've got on those hotspots, we move CCTV around now. We're doing what we can to help improve the situation. We'll never eradicate it, as I say, but I think you will start seeing an improvement. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bosman. Councillor Formosa.
Thanks, Mr. Bosman. Appreciate that. You'll be getting a lot of trolley virus spam from me in the near future. Thanks for that. That's all from me, Mayor.
Councillor Lim.
Thank you, Mayor. The last couple of weeks I had a very busy schedule. It's on Tuesday, the 23rd of August. I had a discussion with the second MP, Member of Parliament, Mr. Lee Talamas, regarding to revitalization of Springvale. He thinks that he's going to help me by forming the board revitalization of Springvale. Yep, after Dr. Tien Quill already tried to help me as well. On Wednesday, the 24th of August, in the morning, I had a chance to provide health seminar to WASA, to all elderly association, about over 100 people. And after that, I went to Springvale Community Hub to attend what we call a cup of coffee with a cup with Mayor Jim Mameti and also Deputy Mayor Eden Foster. On the Thursday, I also joined a celebration of Father Day celebration with Sigma, and also come with representative from Alfred Health, Mrs. Potiri Pan. And on Friday, the 26th of August, I attended Cornerstone Gala Dinner with Mayor Jim Mameti, Deputy Mayor, and also Councillor Sean O'Reilly, and plus Julian Hill, Honourable Julian Hill, and Honourable Gabriel William, and etc. On Sunday, the 28th of August, I also attended All Name Festival with Mayor and also Deputy Mayor and also Sophie Tan, the Councillor Sophie Tan. And on Monday, the 29th of August, Associate Professor from University of Tasmania asked me for a recorded interview regarding to my biography and also regarding to Springvale history and Eastbridge Hostel and also Enterprise Hostel. The most important he interested is also the infrastructure of Springvale since the beginning of 1976 onward, and plus so many things as well. And on Thursday, the 1st of September, I had a chance to join the minibus tour with, two senior sergeant, Sergeant Deb Lay and also Trent Standish, and very, very helpful one. It plus 3 committee lead members, and also 2 council officers as well. In that night, we have a great discussion, and I'm going to ask some questions later on regarding to that feedback. On Friday, the 2nd of September, I attended Multicultural Mooncake Festival that Councillor Sophie already mentioned about, and also Councillor Sean O'Reilly with Mayor and also Deputy Mayor as well. And on Monday, the 5th of September, I had a chance to attend Community Safety Night at the Dandenong Council. On Tuesday, the 6th of September, I attended Vasa Father Day celebration. And at night time, I attended AGM of Springvale Benevolent Society, and with Councillor Sean O'Reilly and also Mayor Jim Mameti. And just unexpected, Mr. Joe Rikiki asked me to give 10-minute speech regarding to health and well-being, and probably freak out a lot of members on that night. On Friday, the 9th of September, I attended Mid-Autumn Mooncake Festival at Noble Park Community Center with organized by Springvale Neighborhood House with music group, a mandolin music group. But in terms, the most important is there's 6 organizations came to join us. First of all, Liver Wealth, that I've been part of many years, Press Screen Victoria, Hearing Australia, Itch, Wise, and also many other organizations as well. That's a very good one. My question is this, on the night that we joined the bus tour, after the tour we sit down and discuss regarding to so many issues in Springvale Activity Center. We discovered that so many things that we should fix in our Springvale Activity Center, such as the signage, very poor signage, that feedback from even the police, from community members and so on, like car park signage, toilet signage, even Springvale community have toilet, we don't know where exactly, look like the outside look like what we call the water tank instead. The toilet is not safe and sound either, that I raised that issue at the beginning of my term as well. The railway station in Springvale look very dark, very hard to notice that is a railway station at all. The Springvale Community Hub, no fences, that's my concern as well, especially along Springvale Road. If the kid with the family came to play in our, what we call the playground in front of the hub, it can be a safety issue because the kid can run across to the railways, to the Springvale Road and can cause all sort of problem. And so many reserves, very, very dark, that look very, very scary. I don't think for myself, I don't think I dare to go that sort of a park at night time. But the good part that we discovered is what we call a community garden, very big community garden that can cater for anyone near Springvale, I think near Sigma more, actually, near Sigma. And the other some issue that we concerned about the honing as well, at multi-level car park, plus also the youngster tend to get together during the afternoon, after school. And I mentioned to the 2 senior sergeants, they said that they think about it. The most important, the lack of resources. The only one thing I'm concerned about, had to ring the OOO instead of an issue. But I think probably not that easy solution at all. Thank you for that.
Mr Devine and probably Mr Kearsley.
Through you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Richard. There was a fair bit there to unpack. The bus tours and the coffee with the cop have been very, very popular to date, and we appreciate the feedback. I think it'd be difficult to respond on all of the items you've raised tonight, but we'd be happy to look at those dot points that you've raised and provide a more detailed response. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yep, sounds good.
Thank you, Mr Devine, and thank you, Mayor. And that's all. I think probably Donna Masick and Marek Kroll are going to give a report very soon, I think, to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lim. Councillor Milkovich.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A number of events I attended, I'll go in a sequence of the dates. First of which one was the 31st of August. We yourselves attended a citizenship ceremony. Unfortunately, I was a little bit late because of the miscommunication in my calendar, but nonetheless, I got there just as you started the ceremony, so it was wonderful to see all these people get together. It was really lovely. There was celebration, kids were running around, great to welcome new Australians. So fabulous event, like always, in a Springvale Community Centre or in the Springvale Town Hall. The next one that I'll mention was, again, with yourself and Councillor Long and Honourable Member of Parliament Gabrielle Williams, Minister, regarding the Dandenong Baseball and Softball Association, the opening of the betting cages, a great project funded 50-50 state government and the council, and also council contributed quite a large amount of money towards fencing and dugouts, which now makes softball and baseball courts at the police paddocks fully compliant on all 3 diamonds, I was told, pitches. So great to see. It was very rainy and very cold, but it didn't dampen the enthusiasm of all the members there. It was just that we were a little bit too late for the barbecue. They just fired up and we had to go. So that was misfortune. And another event that I attended that I got to mention later on that night was a Noble Park United Drina Soccer Club. They had a function at Nikola Tesla Centre in Dufton. Great night, honouring their players, their advancement of their women's team into the higher league, which was great to see. So they're really using the services or the fields of the council, and the councillor Dark, who's the who was actually initiator of all the works done there. He was also present as well and was honoured with the speech. I'm sure he'll mention that as well, so I've got to steal a little bit of his thunder. It was a great night, fun night, great music, traditional dancing, fabulous food and a few drinks. So yeah, that sort of wrapped up my events for the past 2 weeks. Now I'll go from that to a couple of questions to relevant officers. If I could ask the relevant officers and managers to maybe organise a quality check of some of the road repairs that have gone on throughout the municipality. The contractor crews are working really hard to fix the potholes that we have issues all over the place due to the cold weather and wet weather. However, I've noticed that the repairs can be a little bit sketchy, patchy. Some are really good, some are like a little bit rougher. So I was wondering if we could please maybe organise some sort of quality control or you know, after the repairs be done to just get them checked randomly to see that they do meet the standards the community expects of us.
Mr. Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor. Inspections and audits of each and every project that's done is standard, especially in terms of any final payment that the contractor may be receiving. And as we're aware, sometimes where things aren't done to the standard we want, they'll redo it again. If you could, I know we've had a chat about it, but if you could send me any of those street addresses that you have that would like us to go out and have another look, I'll certainly ask the Works team to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Kearsley. Councillor Milkovich.
Thank you, Mr. Kearsley. Thank you, Mayor. Could I also please get just a quick update? I know we spoke about it at the last council meeting, whether there has been any progress in trying to secure a tennis club to operate out of our Lower Stewart Reserve, by any chance? Thank you.
Mr. Devine.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The tennis club at Lower Stewart Reserve advised in early August that they wouldn't be continuing at the site. Since then, council officers have been liaising with Tennis Victoria, and in the short term, council will take over, or council officers will take over the management of that facility, whilst we then work with the community to try and form a new club. We're probably a week and a half, 2 weeks away from the facility being available for the community to use, and we'll then progress an expression of interest for the community to take over the management of that site.
Thank you, Mr. Devine. Councillor Milkovich.
Thank you, Mr. Devine. Mr. Mayor, I've had a letter sent by, anonymous letter, I should say, actually, it was, and peculiar. It was anonymous, and it was actually handwritten, very unusually nowadays to get a handwritten letter by a member of, I believe, one of our Serbian community members that resides somewhere in Dandenong municipality, asking regarding a bus stop in front of or next to the Serbian Orthodox Church in Keysborough. I believe it's on Perry Road. And they do love that the buses are going down that way because when they're in the 70s, 80s, they can now sort of commute to their place of worship back and forth. They did, or this particular person says on behalf of the community is asking, is it possible to possibly ask the state government or whoever's in charge, DOT, to put a shelter on that bus stop? Same like any other bus stop that requires, because they do use it quite a lot. And they said that while it's fantastic, they can commute to church without using their vehicles, which some of them don't drive anymore, that every now and again that the weather is really atrocious and it'll be a welcome addition to that particular bus stop. Thank you.
Mr. Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mayor. Yes, we can certainly add that to the list. The challenge there is if it's not got a high amount of usage. Unfortunately, DOT have a set of criteria, but we can certainly put it on our list to advocate with regards to any further actions that DOT may have with an installation at that site and others that we continue to lobby for.
Thank you, Mr. Kearsley. Councillor Milkovich.
Thank you, Mr. Kearsley. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And lastly, I'd just like to report and thank the council officers, managers, and I think now contractors that the works have finally started on toilet block on Brady Road parking. So I've actually seen action now. It's been fenced off and the asphalt's been dug up. So thank you very much for that. Greatly appreciated, and the residents are looking forward to completion of that project sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Councillor Milkovich. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, following on from the first thing that we started this evening, I wish to pass my condolences to those who are mourning the loss of Queen Elizabeth II. For a lot of residents who are young and up to, I suppose, their mid to late 70s, the only thing they've ever known is the Queen. And I was talking to somebody yesterday who's not far off 80, I think this is 78 years old, and the whole time that they've been alive, they've known the Queen. So it's a very big change for the monarchy, and I'm sure in due course we'll see a lot more things occurring. As Councillor Milkovich mentioned before, I had a couple of very good events I was able to attend. We are now starting the presentation night season where all the presentation nights are coming on, and I'm aware all the football clubs, school graduations are all coming up as we ramp up towards the end of the year. I was fortunate to attend Noble Park Drina, their presentation night, and for the success that they've had with their girls team being promoted into the State 2 League. This is a team which only really started to form once the upgrades were done to the Parkfield Reserve as a part of the Parkfield Master Plan, to which I know myself, former Councillor Blades and Councillor Tan had been very, very heavily involved in ensuring that things were funding and being upgraded. So they were also very, very excited to see that in the budget forthcoming that there is an allocation of $70,000 for an electronic scoreboard, an additional $50,000 for the car park upgrades, starting the design of the works, and some additional landscaping upgrades as well. As we progress through the master plan now, everybody seems to be very, very excited, which is good. My first question this evening, I had a call from a couple of residents who live on Liverpool Drive to do with the Harold Box Reserve. Now, the Harold Box Reserve runs off Liverpool Drive. It's abutting a development which was the old Keysborough Park Primary School site, to which I had previously raised some concerns about. What they've done is they've actually constructed a retaining wall abutting the Harold Box Reserve. And the retaining wall, I query, I suppose, one, how it's been built, because what's occurring is that there's a substantial amount of flooding occurring now next door into the playground. And on the weekend, the playground was actually underwater from all the water that's running off from the way that they've built the retaining wall. I was wondering if we could please have council officers go out and have a look at the reserve. I know driving past this morning, there was like 50 ducks that were swimming in the water. If you had a shotgun, you would have killed 20 of them easily. And I think it's worthwhile seeing what options are available about the flooding into the site, the damage that it is doing to our infrastructure as well, and coming back and seeing what options can be fixed.
Mr Bosman.
Mr Mayor, thank you to yourself. I think on this I will also consult with Mr Kearsley, but in the first instance, let's make sure that the retaining wall, that the levels, etc., that have been built to are in accordance with approved plans. So I will take carriage of that. If there's a problem with the ducks, we'll make sure we move them to the other side of the fence, Councillor. But seriously, let's start off by looking at what the levels are, whether there's compliance with the approved plans, and if there's a need then to talk about other responses, other ways of dealing with the overland flow of water onto the reserve. I will consult with Mr Kearsley on that matter.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, my next question is to do with the Walker Reserve. I'm aware that there's quite a large fence up. The playground is under construction, but I just wanted to get an update on how the master plan is progressing with the wetlands, with the boardwalk, with the playground updates, and also, more importantly, with the LED light upgrades for the Keysborough Tennis Club as well. I'm aware that they are heading into spring and then on into summer as well, and they've just queried some updates on where that's at.
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mayor. I think the last update we gave many months ago was related to some construction material issues that we were having with the swamp area in the drain, the parkland area. So I'll seek an update and also clarify all those other matters that you've raised as well, and give you some further information during the week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. My next question is from George Angelopoulos, who lives on the corner of Turramurra and Wingala Avenue in Keysborough. He's had some queries about some street sweepers starting, I believe, very, very early in the morning and travelling around the street somewhere around that 5:30 in the morning time frame. I'll pass on some details, but if we could please have a look and just find out, one, if it's our street sweepers, or two, potentially if it's, I suppose, somebody next door, and just see what is occurring, because apparently it's at 5:30 quite regularly occurring.
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, we can certainly look at that. If you pass those details on, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. My next question is actually to the same intersection of Turramurra and Wingala. It was also mentioned at night time. It's actually very, very dark, and there's quite a far distance between two lights in the intersection. There's been, I suppose, with where the lights are located further down on Wingala and then on Turramurra, that there is quite a dark black spot right on the intersection of where Turramurra meets Wingala. If we could please have a look at that as well.
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, through you, Mayor, we can certainly look at that issue as well.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. Almost there. I had a call from a Ms Webb and Mr Pearce from Ascot Place in Keysborough. That is abutting the new part where Stanley Road meets. There's been some concerns about the level of townhouse development in Stanley Road at the corner of Ascot Place and the parking that is actually now caused a spill out. There's, I believe it's Floss Court, Periparesis Drive and a couple of others in a row of these townhouses with one shared driveway down the middle. And what's happening is people are parking and spilling out onto Stanley Road and then further up to Ascot Place. And it's becoming quite a blind sight of cars travelling up Ascot Place, attempting to turn right into Stanley Road, where they just can't get through. If we could please have engineering get in touch with them, and I'll pass on the contact details as well.
Mr Kearsley.
Certainly, I think we'll also liaise with the planning area in terms of the parking situation that may have been approved through numerous permits, but also undertake a safety review with regards to traffic movement.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, my final question for this evening actually also came off the same issue down in the new Keysborough Street. On Harlequin Drive, there's a reserve there, and I know there's additional one at the corner of Tyres and Stanley Road. Both of the reserves are looking pretty worse for wear at the moment. I've been travelling by quite regularly and seeing that there's just seems to be the grass is either half dying or there's just not much, I suppose, there in terms of the reserve. I know this was raised previously from former Councillor Kerwin to do with the infrastructure at the reserve, but if we could please have a look and see what additional options there are about potentially additional plantings or additional benches or something to sort of activate the area. I know Harlequin, we have planted things in the past and it consistently dies, whether that's by human interaction or just the ground, but if we could please have a look at that, that would be great.
Mr Kearsley.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mayor. Certainly we can look at that issue as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kearsley. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. No further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Some of the functions I attended since the last council formal meeting. I attended the Tatterson Park Oval One lighting installation with Councillor Garrard and Tim Richardson MP. It's great to see that the lights are on that oval as well. When we were there, every oval at Tatterson Park was being used and it was at night time. It was great to see that the whole Tatterson Park is just humming. And I remember back 10, 15 years ago, it was totally, completely different, where millions and millions of dollars have been spent. Very proud to have been part of where that park was and where it is today. And actually, Mr Benny was there as well. And we're just reminiscing on what it looked like back 15 years ago and where it is today. So, and council have done a lot of work in that area, and I'm very proud over the last 15 years to see that come up to fruition. And we normally never count how many millions have spent there, and we just had a look at and just estimated with Mr Benny, it would have been in excess of over $20–25 million. So it's a huge amount of money that's been spent in that park, and now it's completely humming, and the communities are really enjoying it, whether you've got a dog off leash or whether you're playing at the Tatterson Park Pavilion or inside Springers, playing volleyball, or, you know, there's so many things you can actually do there, so it's fantastic. Also attended the Coffee with a Cop and Councillors pop-up session at the Springvale Community Hub, which is a weekly thing these days, so it's great to be moving around the municipality. Also had the community safety meeting focus on Boyd Lane, Pocket Park and Palm Plaza business. That's part of the enhancing community safety program we're running with VicPol as well. So that's great to be going around and doing that as well with the community. Also had the Dandenong North Primary School documentary launch, Giving Back. I hosted that right here, and it was great to have the Dandenong North Primary School. Also, what was so important about Giving Back is there's actually 13 teachers at Dandenong North Primary School that were actually students at that school. So they're coming back and giving back in their own school where they were primary school students. So I think it's unheard of. And to have so many teachers come back means what a great school that was. And I think Mr McKay, the principal, has been there since the 1980s. So he's been there for a long time, probably over 40 years. So it's a great school. And it was great to have hosted that Giving Back program here at the council building. Also attended the Cornerstone 30-year Gala night where Barbara Siddle, who was the founder of Cornerstone, so it was great to honour Barbara, and it was a great evening to celebrate 30 years community service. Also, I attended the ONAM 2022 hosted by the Malali Association of Victoria. I also attended I hosted it, the graduation ceremony for the Australian Academic Solutions Security Course participants. This is 60 Afghan security forces that looked after the embassy in Afghanistan in Kabul, who were then put on a plane and brought here, and now they've got their certificate in security, and it was great to have them here and host them with their certificate presentation, and they're looking at doing bigger and better things within our community. I also had the opportunity to visit the on-site tour of the Amazon Fulfilment Centre in Dandenong South with Councillor Garrard. We can pick and pack, and we're not really ready to deliver, but we did learn a lot, and it was great to have a look how Amazon actually works, and it is a big unit, and I was very, very surprised how efficient they can work, and that's, they get things out pretty quickly. So it was good to have a tour of the Fulfilment Centre in Dandenong South. Again, coffee with a cop and counsellor, pop-up session at the Afghan Bazaar, which also had the acting CEO, Mr Bosman, visit as well. So also Councillor Lim and Deputy Mayor Foster. It's great to be at different parts, and it was good to have so many traders come and speak, and also residents that were shopping came to speak to us as well and raise their concerns, and it was good to have the Vic Pol there as well, speaking with the community. As Councillor Milkovich mentioned, citizenship ceremonies, probably one of my favourite things. It's just fantastic to see so many people in our community getting their citizenship certificate, and it's always fantastic to see their smiling faces when you hand over their certificate to them. I also had the Ambassador of Kosovo, Her Excellency Ms. Etmira Bardeshala, visit Greater Dandenong, and I thank Mr Bosman, who was also with me when the Ambassador came to visit Dandenong, which we showed her around central Dandenong, and also we went to Kashava Park and also the Dandenong Thunder Soccer Club. She was, for her first time, visited Dandenong, and she was very impressed with the way that Dandenong has such a multicultural community, and we worked together with all our community groups. I also attended the Mid-Autumn Mooncake Festival hosted by the National Liaison Council for Chinese Australians. It was good to have this group. I think they're more in Monash, and that's why we had so many Monash councillors and had Monash MPs. But I don't think they've got a hall as good as ours. So the City Hall in Springvale is attracting many celebrations from other municipalities, which is great. And they love the acoustics, they love the kitchen, they love the foyer. And the best part about it, when you drive in, you see that beautiful community hub. I think most municipalities just come and see, wow, what's happened here if they haven't been here for the last couple of years. And very proud to show off what we've done as well in Springvale. Also attended the Mid-Autumn Festival hosted by the Golden Flower Chinese Friendship Association. Had a few Mid-Autumn festivals and mooncakes and things like that, so it was great the last couple of weeks. I also attended the Keysborough Fire Brigade presentation night, where there's about 45 volunteers at Keysborough. Great to be there with them and thank them for what they do, and I've always admired firefighters. They tend to run into burning buildings while everybody else is running out of them, so I do thank them for what they do within the community. Also had the Greater Dandenong Council's Community Safety Night with Victoria Police, which we do annually, and it's very informative, and we share ideas and workshop ideas, and it's great to have them visit us every 12 months. I also attended the Combined Small Business and Multicultural Business Ministerial Council meeting, and also Springvale Benevolent Society AGM 60th anniversary. I remember when I first got on council, there was Les Eccleston and John Boos and these kind of people, and now Joe Rakiki's taken over the baton. Now he's been the president for the last 20 years. So looking forward to, they're telling me they're having a big celebration, 60th year. So looking forward to attending that in later on in the year. I also attended I got an invite back to the Dandenong North Primary School visit. Their grade 4 students, who were very, very smart, I might add, wanted to learn more about local government. So I was there for about an hour and a half explaining to them what the 3 tiers of government, how they work and how local government works, and they were all over it. They had been studying it and they were very, very well informed. So they were probably teaching me as well, as much as I was teaching them. So it was great to spend some time at the Dandenong North Primary School. Also attended the official opening of the Dandenong Police Paddock softball, baseball, batting cage and dugouts project, as Councillor Milkovich spoke about, and Councillor Long. It's great to have these great facilities, softball and baseball. They're not sports that you hear of every day, but it's great and they're growing. And I'm not sure how the baseball team, the baseball ladies, had their grand final on Sunday, so I haven't heard how they went. So hopefully they did well, and I wish them well, and they'll be getting definitely more and more practice. Doesn't matter how the climate is, because they're going to be undercover, and it's a fantastic facility that council has built with the help from the state government as well. Also attended the Onam Harvest Festival hosted by the Karali Hindu Society in Melbourne, and also the president of SEMVAC, our very own Councillor Lloyd Trong, invited us to the Tet Trung Tu Lantern Festival, and got some lanterns here. And how's my Vietnamese? Chuk Mung Tet Trung Tu. How's that? Thank you. And also I attended the Curry Festival at Dandenong Market with Councillor Lim and Mr Bosman as well. There were so many people, we'd lose each other. We had to keep on finding each other because it was such a great turnout, and I congratulate the Dandenong Market on hosting the Curry Festival. And that's all I've done over the last couple of weeks, Mr Benny. So you've got some questions taken at the last council meeting to table.
Yes, Mayor, there were 19 councillor questions taken on notice at the last meeting. All have been completed, and the answers will be included in the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you, Mr Benny. Item 7, urgent business. If there is no urgent business, I declare the meeting closed at 9:31 p.m. Thank you and have a good evening.